jury is not present.
Jurors had the day off, but it was a critical day in court for both O.J. Simpson and the state. Tying up legal loose ends, lawyers argued about instructions Judge Lance Ito will give the jury tomorrow.
The defendant does not want the court to even suggest to the jury that if he was there, they can speculate on the state of mind he might have had if he indeed was the perpetrator of this crime.
Defense attorneys don't want Ito to tell jurors they can consider a verdict of second-degree murder.
There is not one shred of evidence that the people can point to suggesting that Ron Goldman was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
But prosecutors fought back.
This jury should not be placed with that Hobson's choice of either convicting this man of first degree, where they don't believe that has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt, but they know he's a murderer, or set this man free.
Looking, however, at Ronald Goldman, I don't think there's any reasonable interpretation of the evidence that would not indicate that Mr. Goldman's presence at the Bundy crime scene was by sheer chance. So I will instruct on both first and second as a lesser included.
Now the jury won't need as much evidence to return a guilty verdict. In another defeat for the defense, the California Supreme Court refused to order Judge Ito to tell jurors. Former Los Angeles Police Detective Mark Furman is unavailable for further testimony.
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Furman invoked his Fifth Amendment constitutional right against self-incrimination when the defense tried to recall him. Simpson's lawyers wanted to confront Furman about racial slurs.
Good morning, Your Honor. As much as I would like to address some of the misrepresentations made about myself and Nicole concerning our life together.
His voice sometimes quivering, O.J. Simpson declared his innocence and said he has confidence in the jury's integrity. Jurors were not present for Simpson's unusual address to the court.
I did not, could not, and would not have committed this crime. I have 4 kids, 2 kids I haven't seen in a year. They ask me every week, Dad, how much longer? I make this trial over. Thank you.
All right.
Cut short by the judge, Simpson then waived his right to testify. Prosecutor Marcia Clark demanded but did not get the opportunity to cross-examine him.
Perhaps he would allow me then the opportunity, since he would like to make these statements to the court, I would like the opportunity to examine him about them. May he take a seat in the blue chair?
Judge Ito denied the standard acquittal motion from lead defense lawyer Johnny Cochran. Fred Goldman, father of victim Ron Goldman, showed his anger outside court.
He hasn't seen his kids in a year. He's seen at least 2. I will never see my son again. How dare he throw that up for the world to hear and feel sorry for him.
Goldman called Simpson's statement an orchestrated move to influence the jury and public opinion.
Are we nuts? Do we really believe that these people are sequestered to a point where they don't know anything that's going on the outside world?
Something Cochran strongly denied.
No, he was speaking from his heart.
Earlier, Simpson jurors heard what they've been waiting to hear nearly 9 months.
We have no further testimony presented at this time, and as difficult as it is, the defense does rest.
And the people rest.
Did not, could not, and would not have committed this crime.
In a move that startled some legal experts, O.J. Simpson made a statement to the court claiming his innocence. Simpson said he had confidence in the jury's integrity. The prosecution protested, but he faced no cross-examination. The unusual statement came outside the jury's presence, a move prosecutor Marcia Clark quickly tried to circumvent.
Perhaps he would allow me then the opportunity, since he would like to make these statements to the court, I would like the opportunity to examine him about them. May he take a seat in the blue chair?
But Judge Lance Ito said no. Outside court, the father of victim Ron Goldman called Simpson's statement disgusting and charged it was an orchestrated move to sway the jury and public opinion.
How dare he throw that up for the world to hear and feel sorry for him.
I'd like to address some of the misrepresentations made about myself.
If he had a statement to make, he should have gotten on the damn stand and said something. I mean, are we nuts? Do we really believe that these people are sequestered to a point where they don't know anything that's going on the outside world?
We have no further testimony presented at this time, and as difficult as it is, the defense does rest at this point.
Earlier in court, jurors heard the words they've waited for nearly 9 months.
And the people rest.
The law requires that I read these instructions to you here.
Judge Ito then instructed the jury on what is and what's not reasonable doubt.
It is not a mere possible doubt, because everything relating to human affairs is open to some possible or imaginary doubt.
Ito reminded the jury the burden of proof lies with the prosecution.
The defendant is not required to prove himself innocent or to prove that any other person committed the crimes charged.
If the jury finds Simpson guilty, they have a choice of first or second-degree murder. The Simpson jury has been sequestered longer than any other. They have heard from 126 witnesses, among them Simpson's daughter, Nicole Brown Simpson's sister, controversial police detectives, and noted scientific experts. And though testimony is finally over, the price tag continues to rise. It's cost more than $2.5 million to sequester the jury, another $2.7 million for courtroom and jail security. With other expenses, the trial's total cost is more than $8 million.
Point. You must remember all my admonitions to you.
I'm not saying that the blood could only have gotten on the well of that door handle at Rockingham.
Forgive me for interrupting you. Let me see. Count the sidebar.
Judge Lance Ito became furious when the camera showed a close-up of Simpson taking notes. Ito claimed the view might show what Simpson was writing.
Apparently it's necessary to tell them that it's not appropriate, and it's a very flagrant violation and intrusion into the attorney-client privilege, and I'm inclined to terminate the coverage at this time.
But after reviewing a videotape of the close-up shot, Ito agreed with the media attorney to allow coverage to resume.
No one can say that any jury has sacrificed more.
The interruption came as prosecutor Marcia Clark delivered closing arguments. She wasted no time in trying to wipe out the stain of racism in the trial, and she did it by attacking her own witness, former police detective Mark Furman, who reported finding a bloody glove at Simpson's estate and who lied on the stand when he said he had not used a particular racial slur in the past 10 years.
Although it would be completely understandable if you were to feel angry and disgusted with Mark Furman, as we all are, still it would be wrong to find the defendant guilty, not guilty, just because of that anger and disgust.
Clark then turned to the murder timeline. She recalled Nicole Brown Simpson's last meal with her family at Mezzaluna Restaurant, how Nicole's mother lost her glasses, and how Ron Goldman volunteered to take them to Nicole, arriving at her condominium about 10 minutes after 10 the night of the murders. Clark asked jurors to remember Nicole's neighbors who testified about the sounds they heard that night, especially the unusual persistent barking of Nicole's Akita.
Which means that if that dog is barking like that and she's not tending to it, she's already dead. When he's posing with Sidney, there's no cut on the back of the middle finger of the left hand, and that's important.
Can this thing really be ending? With closing arguments underway, can jury deliberations, even a verdict, be far behind? These law students think so, and they've gathered at the SMU Law Library to watch Marcia Clark do her legal stuff.
He heard those thumping noises on his wall, very loud. So loud and so strong that the wall he was leaning on shook and a picture moved.
Good thing they decided to watch early. The ones who tuned in later after the judge pulled the plug found only soap operas and talk shows. Law student Peter Salavery says the trial has had him hopelessly hooked.
It's been a year and a half. It's like the Tyson fight. There's so much publicity. It's almost like Jurassic Park. You're just kind of drawn to watch it.
He admits to being a little in awe of the high-powered, high-priced attorneys.
We don't study about any of this stuff. I don't think anybody studies this. This is like an art. This is like a talent of many years. I mean, there's no way that these guys are new at what they're doing. They've been doing it for a while. They're pros.
True, though, when you look at the photograph of the defendant in the...
Over at Killam's electronics store, a few people catch some of the prosecution closing, not many.
I think everyone's tired of it and they want it to be over with.
What do you think now that it's finally reached closing arguments?
I think everyone's happy, and
happy why?
Happy we don't have to talk about it anymore. Maybe we can stop talking about it with each other and get on to more important things.
He says he did watch a little of the closing argument.
It's already gotten boring in about 15 minutes or less.
And just to show how unpredictable this trial can still be, late this afternoon, Judge Ito turned the TV camera back on. Bill Brown, Channel 8 News.
Is he a racist? Yes.
Prosecutor Marcia Clark wasted no time in distancing the prosecution from retired police detective Mark Furman.
In fact, do we wish there were no such person on the planet? Yes.
But not from the evidence.
And it would be a tragedy if, with such overwhelming evidence, ladies and gentlemen, as we have presented to you, you found the defendant not guilty, in spite of all that, because of the racist attitudes of one police officer.
Clark then went to work piecing together a puzzle for the jury. First, she turned to the murder timeline to show Simpson had a window of opportunity between 9:36 p.m., when Simpson and house guest Cato Kalin returned from a fast food restaurant, to approximately 10:52, when Kalin heard 3 loud thumps outside his room.
The defendant came back from Bundy in a hurry. Ron Goldman upset his plans, and things took a little longer than anticipated. And in his haste, he ran right into that air conditioner that was hanging over that south pathway. And running into that air conditioner caused him to fall against the wall, making the wall of Cato's room shake.
Looking for the address?
Clark reminded the jury that about that same time, the limousine driver who had arrived to take Simpson to the airport saw someone of Simpson's height and weight going into the estate.
The bell of that door handle at Rockingham.
Forgive me for interrupting you.
In the middle of Clark's arguments, Judge Lance Ito decided the courtroom camera got too close to Simpson's notes for comfort, and Ito had the camera turned off.
So, Mr. Bancroft, I'm going to direct you to turn the camera to the seal, and the television coverage is terminated.
But the flap only lasted about an hour. The camera was turned back on, and Clark's closing argument resumed. Clark reminded the panel of the blood, fiber, and hair evidence she says proves Simpson committed the killings. Among that evidence, the socks in Simpson's bedroom.
He left the socks on his bedroom floor. And in that one simple, careless act, gave us the most, possibly single most devastating proof of guilt in the case. Because on that sock we found blood that matched Nicole Brown.
Marcia Clark dismissed the defense suggestion that the murders were carried out by Colombian drug dealers. She said the killings were done by a man who was enraged because he had been abandoned by his ex-wife.
One who wanted to control her and failed. And in failing, found the one way to keep her under control where she could never slip out of it again. And that man is this defendant.
You know, Ron, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole, she was in the wrong place for a long time.
Prosecutor Chris Darden reinforced the state's motive theory by focusing on O.J. Simpson's often volatile relationship with ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson. Darden painted Simpson as a man full of jealousy and rage. He replayed the 911 call Nicole made 8 months before her murder.
911 emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Green? He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson.
The voices of a sobbing Nicole pleading for help and of an angry O.J. Simpson echoed through the courtroom.
It's all about control. The beating, the humiliation, all of that. That's how you control people. You beat them down.
Nicole was going to go get some ice cream.
Darden reminded jurors of Denise Brown's testimony, where she said Simpson called Nicole a fat pig while she was pregnant. Darden described their relationship as up and down until May 22nd of 1994, when Nicole decided to get out. Darden tried to deflect an expected defense argument, saying pictures taken at his daughter's recital showing a jovial Simpson were simply posed. Darden then told jurors later that night hate and rage caused Simpson to explode.
And the rage that he has, the anger, the hate that he has for her that night at that time, it's like it flows out of him and into the knife, and from the knife into her. And let me make it clear to you, he's enraged, but he has made a conscious decision, a premeditated decision, a deliberate decision to go there and do what he is about to do to this woman.
Darden said prosecutors showed Simpson had the opportunity and the motive to kill.
With each thrust of that knife into her body and into Ron's body, there is a release, you know, a gradual release of that anger and that rage. And he stabs and he cuts and he slices until that rage is gone and until these people are dead.
Goldman family, the Brown family, to the Simpson family. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Then it was the defense's turn. Lawyer Johnny Cochran wasted no time in attacking the Los Angeles Police Department, specifically former Detective Mark Furman.
They allowed this investigation to be infected by a dishonest and corrupt detective.
It was a slow burn.
Prosecutor Christopher Darden focused mostly on O.J. Simpson's volatile relationship with his ex-wife. Darden reminded the jury of Simpson's brutality by playing one of the 911 calls made by Nicole Brown Simpson.
911 emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please. Well, okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record.
Darden said Simpson worked himself into a fit of rage the night of June 12, 1994, after being spurned by Nicole and his girlfriend, Paula Barbieri. Darden said murder brought Simpson relief.
He wanted her to be there face to face to know just who it was who was doing this to her. With each thrust of that knife into her body and into Ron's body, there is a release. He stabs and he cuts and he slices until that rage is gone.
And Darden told the jury point blank why they should find Simpson guilty.
He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player. But he's still a murderer.
But I'm not going to argue with you, ladies and gentlemen.
Lawyer Johnny Cochran opened the final arguments for the defense. He told the jury Simpson would have been eliminated early on as a suspect if police had done their job properly.
We think implicated an innocent man. And they never, ever looked for anyone else.
As expected, Cochran quickly focused on the conspiracy theme, suggesting Detective Mark Furman planted the bloody glove on Simpson's estate.
Where's the blood on the ground? Where's the blood on the leaves around there? Where's any of that? That glove looks as though it's been placed there. Maybe I can demonstrate this graphically.
Cochran ridiculed the prosecution's infamous glove demonstration, and he even put on a knit cap to suggest the idea of Simpson sneaking around in the dark was ridiculous.
Did not, could not, and would not have committed this.
Courtroom psychologists say in order to find O.J. Simpson not guilty, the jury must learn about something they're not supposed to know, his statement of innocence while they were out of the courtroom.
But there are some things that transcend the legal proceeding, and that would be, one example would be the relationship between a man and a woman.
Lawyer and psychologist Robert Gordon says jurors will learn of the statement perhaps during family visits, even with the best of intentions.
And people say things unwittingly, unintentionally, but whatever is on their mind, whatever they're concerned about, they will find a way to communicate with each other. They're doing it non-verbally, they're doing it with body language, they're doing it with what I call winking, blinking, and nodding.
Print shop owner Kevin Moss was sequestered as a juror in the David Goff capital murder trial in Tarrant County. And he agrees, even courtroom spectators try to influence the jury.
We had members of friends or relatives of the defendant who, you know, would kind of do things in the courtroom during the process that were distracting and trying to sway our opinions in favor of the defendant. Of course, once that happened, that particular person was not allowed in the courtroom again.
We'll be in recess until 9 a.m.
By contrast, a jury member in the Christy Coslow trial says no outside information got to her, directly or indirectly, during the highly publicized case. The young juror spoke in a telephone interview and asked us not to use her name.
There was no discussion of any outside influences, and we were ordered by the law not to, and I feel like I could have respected that if I had been able to be with my family, especially on Father's Day.
Experts and jury members agree on one subject: sequestering people is an injustice, and they feel it should be used only in rare cases, if ever. Mary Stewart, Channel 8 News.
They will never, ever be able to explain that to you.
Prosecutor Marcia Clark yesterday called them the most devastating piece of evidence. Tonight, Johnny Cochran called them the prosecution's undoing. They are the socks found in O.J. Simpson's bedroom. Cochran pointed out police criminalists photographed and collected the socks about 4:30 in the afternoon. But a police video taken earlier in the afternoon does not show the socks on the floor.
How could the socks be there at 4:35 when you just saw they're not there at 4:13? Who's fooling whom here?
Cochran said Simpson is an innocent man, unjustly accused by police officers who made a rush to judgment. Cochran immediately touched on what have been the main themes of the defense case: contamination of evidence due to sloppy police work.
Because of their bumbling, they ignored obvious clues.
And conspiracy, singling out Detective Mark Furman.
They allowed this investigation to be infected by a dishonest and corrupt detective.
It was a long day yesterday.
Cochran took over after Christopher Darden finished the prosecution's closing argument, making an impassioned plea to the jury.
And please, do the right thing.
Darden told the jury Simpson was consumed with rage, anger, and jealousy. He said Simpson stabbed his ex-wife to death because he had a personal vendetta to settle.
The hate that he has for her that night, at that time, it's like it flows out of him and into the knife, and from the knife into her.
Darden said Ron Goldman simply showed up at the wrong time.
Ron, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole, she was in the wrong place for a long time. He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player. But he's still a murderer.
Emblematic of the best football player in America.
Cochran went to work resurrecting Simpson's image. He used photographs and videotape showing Simpson with Nicole and her family hours before the murders. Cochran said the pictures do not depict a man in a jealous rage.
So thank heaven again for the visual. A photograph is worth 1,000 words. You think the police department is going to stop it? You think the DA's office is going to stop it? Do you think we can stop it by ourselves? It has to be stopped by you.
Sounding much like a preacher full of fire and brimstone, Simpson's lead defense lawyer even quoted the Bible as he urged the mostly black jury to strike a blow against racism by acquitting Simpson.
Personification of evil.
Cochran then escalated his attack on retired Detective Mark Furman and alleged misconduct by the Los Angeles Police Department.
This man, this perjurer, this racist, this genocidal racist, this is the man.
Cochran called Furman America's worst nightmare, compared him to Hitler, and he urged the jury to cast doubt on the bloody glove Furman found at Simpson's estate. Cochran then called lead detective Philip Van Adder a liar, too.
Furman and Van Adder, twins of deception, will bring you a message that you cannot trust.
Cochran told the jury to send the world a message, while his message drew the wrath of the father of victim Ron Goldman outside the courtroom.
This man is the worst kind of human being imaginable. He compares racism of its worst kind in this world to what's going on in this case.
You're not going to be naive.
This man is sick.
And in a rare news conference, O.J. Simpson's family criticized Goldman.
And it's very shocking that once Johnny gets up and starts telling what we feel happens, that this has rocked somebody's world. I think it's time for everybody to wake up.
Is there EDTA there?
Back in court, defense lawyer Barry Scheck started his closing argument, saying the prosecution's scientific evidence cannot be trusted.
And you cannot convict on that evidence. There are many, many reasonable doubts buried right in the heart of the scientific evidence in this case.
Scheck hammered at the issue of alleged police contamination. He talked about the blood-stained socks police found at Simpson's estate and about blood collected belatedly from a gate near the crime scene.
No degradation, EDTA. Coincidence or corroboration that something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. There is a cancer at the heart of this case. This is a reasonable doubt. You put this together with the sock.
You set the standards. You tell us what's right and wrong.
As attorney Johnny Cochran preaches a closing argument in Simpson's defense, prosecutor Marcia Clark contrasts with a softer, gee, I'm your best friend approach.
I feel like it's been forever since I've talked to you. It kind of has.
While Cochran attacks witnesses like a pit bull,
This man cannot be trusted. He is central to the prosecution.
Clark gives the jury grammar lessons.
But it's reasonable to infer, again, reasonable inference.
At the Crowley Courts Library, defense attorneys search law books to help their clients. They also watch the Simpson team's style to see whether Cochran's fire outshines Clark's coolness.
I think it'll help because you have to be passionate about making the jurors understand what the important facts are, those facts that support your client's side of the case.
Yeah, I think he did a pretty good job. I think that was the way that probably most defense lawyers would have handled that under the facts and circumstances.
Some Texas attorneys say too much of a good thing can hurt, though, now that closing arguments have lasted several days.
I wouldn't go 2 days. I believe in brevity. I think the jury appreciates that, and so I would cut it short.
If I put this knit cap on, who am I?
They agree lawyers on both sides of the Simpson case are playing it up for the camera's worldwide audience in a way that may not work in a Texas courtroom.
I think it really makes it a lot easier to remember.
When the jury finally decides Simpson's fate, it may also determine whether finesse or fire makes a better closing argument. Anita Vanetti, Channel 8 News.
And beyond the dim unknown standeth the same God for all people, keeping watch above his own. He watches all of us, and he'll watch you in your decision.
Defense lawyer Johnny Cochran was at his oratorial best, his voice thundering one moment and dropping to a whisper the next. But he rarely strayed from his theme of racism and police corruption, and he did not let up his attacks on the detectives he called the devils of deception.
That is Mark Furman, pointing, you see the envelope? Pointing under this neatly arranged cap and glove supposedly just happened to fall right under that bush in that fashion. That's what you're asked to believe. For what purpose was Van Adder carrying Mr. Simpson's blood in his pocket for 3 hours and a distance of 25 miles instead of booking it down the hall at Parker Center?
But Cochran told the jury fate was giving them a chance to right past wrongs.
Maybe this is why you were selected. There's something in your background and your character that helps you understand this is wrong. Maybe you're the right people at the right time, at the right place to say no more. We're not going to have this.
They didn't book the evidence.
Lawyer Barry Scheck presented the more scientific part of the defense argument. He called the police crime lab a cesspool of contamination.
Some of the errors they made on their own validation study, Mr. Yamauchi and the others, were of the kind that could create false positives that could convict innocent people. There is a cancer at the heart of this case.
There may be 1,000 such questions in a case like this.
In his final summation, Cochran challenged prosecutor Marcia Clark to answer 15 questions he said proved reasonable doubt of Simpson's guilt.
1. Why? They're on the monitor. Did the blood show up on the sock? Almost 2 months after a careful search for evidence. And finally, 15. How come the gloves just don't fit?
And then one final plea to the jury.
But this is O.J. Simpson's one day in court. By your decision. You control his very life in your hands. Do the right thing, remembering that if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. This man, this perjurer, this racist, this genocidal racist, this is the man. Stop this cover-up. Stop this cover-up. If you don't stop it, then who? There was another man not too long ago in the world who had those same views, who wanted to burn people, who had racist views. One of the worst people in the history of this world, Adolf Hitler.
This man is sick. We have seen a man who perhaps is the worst kind of racist himself. Someone who compares a person who speaks racist comments to Hitler. A person who murdered millions of people.
Goldman's remarks were too much for the O.J. Simpson family to take. For the first time since the trial began, they called their own news conference.
And if someone cannot accept the fact that we have Mark Furmans walking around in this world who has collected all of the vital evidence, and they say that he is not important in this case, they're living in a fantasy world.
You may reject the whole testimony of a witness.
This man ought to be ashamed of himself to walk amongst decent human beings. This man is a disgrace to human beings. No. He is one of the most disgusting human beings I have ever had to listen to in my life.
This is the United States of America, and it's wrong. Even when you're hurting, it's wrong for someone to get up and to personally attack our lawyers and say that they're liars. The only one that can say that Orenthal James Simpson is guilty of these murders are the 12 people in that jury box. It's not you, it's not I. It's the 12 people in that jury box. Now, we know he's innocent.
Counsels for both sides argued that, quote, the world is watching, unquote. You are reminded that you must not be influenced by mere sentiment.
Judge Lance Ito gave jurors their final instructions so that Monday they can begin deliberating the fate of O.J. Simpson.
If you rely on the record and use your common sense, you'll find your way through the smoke.
The jury received a double dose of rebuttal argument from the prosecution. Christopher Darden went first, urging the panel to resist making rash judgments based on defense rhetoric.
Some folks would like to get you all riled up and get you so upset that you move suddenly, and so that you drown in the minutia, so that you choke on the smoke.
What they've done to our client is wrong.
While defense lawyer Johnny Cochran quoted yesterday from the Bible, Darden turned to the Constitution.
And you know what it said? It said he doesn't have the right to take those lives. The Constitution says that a man has no right to kill and then get away with it.
I want to talk to you about what makes sense, okay?
Prosecutor Marcia Clark had the last word, but she was continually interrupted by the defense.
If there is evidence of a conspiracy, it would be my obligation to dismiss.
It was that line of questioning that made the defense object the loudest.
In this state, every state, they've gone way over the line, and it's really got to stop. It's really got to stop.
O.J. did it.
There were protests outside the courthouse, too. Los Angeles Police Chief Willie Williams demanded an apology from the defense for what he called race baiting.
Their actions are deliberately making an attempt to raise fears among all walks of life in this community.
And the DNA confirmed that it was hers. It was her blood.
Back inside the courtroom, Clark presented a rapid-fire review of evidence. The bloody gloves, the socks, and the blood in the Bronco. And she attacked the defense theory that Simpson was the victim of a massive police conspiracy.
Detective Van Adder and Detective Lang never even knew Mark Furman until they met him that night at Bundy. And yet the allegation by the defense is that they got together that night, meeting for the very first time, and everybody's covering up and conspiring all of a sudden. You realize how many people have to be involved? I mean, it boggles the mind.
Then the courtroom fell silent as Clark closed her case, showing pictures of the murder victims and playing an audio tape of 911 calls a crying Nicole Brown Simpson made to police.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here? Hey, what is he?
We ask you to find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree of Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown.
Let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel, including our two alternates.
It was perhaps the most startling development yet in the O.J. Simpson trial, and it happened just midway through the first day of jury deliberations.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we were taking our brief recess, Mrs. Robertson advised me that you buzzed 3 times and indicated that after receiving the verdict forms that you have reached a verdict in this case. Is that correct, Madam Foreman? All right. Madam Foreman, would you hand the sealed envelope to Deputy Trower, please?
Even the lawyers were caught by surprise. So the verdict was sealed, and everyone except the jury was left in the dark.
We are missing, as you can tell, several of the attorneys. Predominantly, we're missing Ms. Clark and Mr. Cochran, and I indicated to the attorneys that I would give them a reasonable opportunity to be here for the announcement of the verdict. And I've indicated to them that I will accept the verdict from you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And so we will stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And then what we will do tomorrow morning, Madam Foreman, is I will return this sealed envelope to you. I'm going to ask you to examine the verdict forms to make sure they are the same ones that you have signed, that they're in the same order, have not been changed. They'll be in the custody of Mrs. Robertson overnight. And then if everything is appropriate, then we'll accept the verdicts from you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
Question, was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22? Answer, I didn't see it.
The jury reached its decision just minutes after hearing a court reporter read back the testimony of prosecution witness Alan Park. Park is the limousine driver who drove Simpson to the airport the night of the murders. Park testified he saw someone resembling Simpson enter the Rockingham house at 10:55 that same night. The jury's interest in Park's testimony suggests they may have been considering the prosecution's timeline and whether Simpson had time to commit the murders. But all that remains a mystery, at least until tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, then have your last pleasant evening, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
You could find reasons why it would indicate a not guilty, or you could find reasons why it would indicate a guilty. My experience over the years has been when you try and play those games, you usually end up wrong.
Dallas attorney Doug Skemp refuses to play the game of interpretation of the Simpson jury's quick return, saying even if a short deliberation normally points one way or the other, this has not been a normal case, and any formulas won't add up. Others are more bold.
Just based on the overwhelming amount of evidence, the short time that they were out, 3 to 4 hours, and in particular, the testimony that they asked to read back was very damaging to the defense, and as soon as that was brought out, they reached a verdict. And based on that, I would say guilty. I know it would be in Texas.
I still think it's an acquittal. Again, I think that the speed, based on people I've talked to, the wider social implications of it all.
Psychologist and attorney Bob Leone says his studies show that the African-American community is overwhelmingly inclined to believe Simpson is innocent, and that therefore the majority African-American jury will acquit. All legal experts seem to agree the jury made up its mind a long time ago.
It may tell you that at the close of evidence, when all the evidence was heard, the jurors had an idea of what they were going to do, and that the jury arguments were, if you will, window dressing.
But what about the call for rereading of limo driver Alan Park's testimony, regarded as damaging for Simpson?
Just because it favors the prosecution does not mean that the jury wanting that information is, so to speak, buying the prosecution theory.
And did the jury's reported lack of eye contact with Simpson mean anything?
That generally is a bad sign, but conversely, I've seen jurors, and I've had jurors personally, that have looked at you, smiled at you, and yet they've ruled against you.
This flurry of speculation will be put to rest soon enough with a verdict that will need no interpretation. Heather Ishimaru, Channel 8 News.
No way! No way! Chase, there is no justice.
Good. Well, it was shocking. I really thought they was going to find him guilty, to be honest, but I guess not enough evidence in the whole trial, I guess. And, you know, I'm happy for him if he's happy with himself, you know. You unhappy with the verdict?
I'm very unhappy. I feel sorry for the Goldman family because there's no other possibility. And for them to come back and just say, oh, well, you know, he's not guilty, I don't see how they could see that. If I'd been on the jury, in my heart, I couldn't have done that to his family.
Are you surprised?
I'm very shocked.
I cannot believe it. America will be the laughingstock of the world. There is no justice. I mean, I can't believe it.
You think he's guilty?
I think he's guilty. All the evidence proves it. What else can you do? That's too sad.
You know, with so much corruption going on between the races in the world, that another uproar would cause something to go wrong, I'm sure. And I'm just happy that it's over now. We can get back to our regular programming and things.
not guilty of...
How do you feel about the system? What does it tell you?
I think it worked today. It worked today. It fails a lot of time, but it worked today.
Okay.
Especially for OJ. Yeah, we've been crying in here.
So what was it like in here when the verdict was read?
What was the reaction?
Yeah.
I praise God. I thank God that, that the jury came to the verdict and it was good on OJ's behalf.
Well, they didn't have enough evidence because you can't kill two people and not get no more blood than what they found. That was one reason.
I'm glad that it worked for him. It kind of scares me to think of so many other individuals that may be behind bars because they didn't have the finances to fight the system as it is. There's no doubt in my mind if I had been in that situation that I'd probably be doing time now. But I'm glad it did work for him, and there is hope for the American justice system after all.
Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman.
I think it was a good decision because there was evidence that was showing that he didn't do it, and I'm really relieved.
No, I didn't expect it. I think what you got here is a justice system basically held hostage based on race, and he can thank Rodney King probably for his verdict.
As long as it was a reasonable doubt, I looked for him and found him not guilty, but my personal opinion, I think he did have something to do with it.
I don't know, I had a lot of mixed feelings on it. If he was innocent, then I'm really happy that he was set free. If he was guilty, then I'm sad. You've always heard justice is blind, but it makes me think, well, it's not free. What would have happened had he not had the money to pay for the defense team that he had?
I hope he's learned a lot about how to treat women and how to be a good husband. And I sincerely hope he puts some real efforts into a conviction that if he didn't do this, we find out who did kill her.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
O.J. Simpson stood with his defense team to hear the verdict that would decide his fate and end the trial that has captivated the nation for 9 months.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least 1 crime of murder of the first degree and 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this 2nd day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes. Ron Goldman's sister sobbed as the verdicts were read. Simpson's son, Jason, cried too. And outside the courtroom, cheers from the huge crowd of people wanting to experience the verdict in the trial of the century.
I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over.
Jason Simpson read a statement from his father.
But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman.
And it is the second white van without the rack that is carrying O.J. Simpson's...
Meanwhile, Simpson was driven home in a white van, a scene reminiscent of the slow-speed chase involving the white Bronco more than a year ago. But this time, Simpson arrived home a free man.
Race plays a part of everything in America.
Lead defense attorney Johnny Cochran acknowledged race played a big part in this case.
It would malpractice if a man has racist views in a case and a lawyer doesn't pursue that.
I first want to extend my thanks to the families of the victims.
Prosecutors, meanwhile, expressed deep disappointment.
Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system.
We came here in search of justice. You'll have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it.
Chris Darden was unable to finish his statement. He broke down and slowly walked away.
Please give us a moment. It is it's very difficult for any of us to speak without great emotion today.
At first, at DFW Airport, things were quiet. Just a few people coming and going. In ones and twos, they gathered before the television sets.
It's time.
The morning had a different feel to it, nervous and kind of uneasy. As you walked around, you could pick up bits and pieces of conversation. Guilty for sure, could be trouble, bet you $5. He doesn't have a chance, reasonable doubt. At the YMCA downtown, many forgot about fitness and focused on the minds of 12 people half a country away. Out at the State Fair of Texas, there was fun to be had. No time to watch a special report. Ira Weinstein and Gary Siegel watch as long as they can, then it's time to go.
We got to board an airplane here, and we leave in about 15 minutes.
You're not going to be able to catch the verdict?
No, hopefully the pilot will tell us what the score was.
On occasion, perhaps a handful allotted to a lifetime, things happen that transcend the ordinariness of daily life, an event that commands our collective attention. This is such a day. It is a moment caught in time, drawing the eyes and the ears of us all. In Fort Worth, at the Harbor's Galley restaurant, lunch is not the main item on the menu. Back at the airport, Kevin Godbold settles in with his friend Mike to watch television. As flights come in, the crowd grows, passengers, pilots, flight attendants. It's kind of noisy, but as Judge Ito begins to speak, people stop talking here. Some almost hold their breath. Across the terminal, there is a hush.
No way! No way! Chase, there is no justice.
Good.
Is that incredible?
Not.
Is that incredible?
I cannot believe it. America will be the laughingstock of the world. There is no justice.
I feel sorry for the Goldman family because there's no other possibility. And for them to come back and just say, oh, well, you know, he's not guilty, I don't see how they could see that. If I'd been on the jury, in my heart, I couldn't have done that.
Well, it was shocking. I really thought they was going to find him guilty, to be honest, but I guess not enough evidence in the whole trial, I guess, and, you know, I'm happy for him if he's happy with himself, you know.
Back at Fair Park, the verdict is read. At the downtown Y, many seem subdued and angry.
What I expected. Yeah, I'm a criminal lawyer. Not what I wanted, but what I expected.
Over in South Dallas, even the mail has to wait. A letter carrier stops off at Graham's barber shop to catch the verdict. So there it is. He is not guilty. Life goes on. We may not agree, but we have shared something. And in that, at least, we are together. Bill Brown, Channel 8 News.
What it was about their case that worked and did not work.
As the noon hour approached, customers and sales clerks congregated in Sears' electronics department. Would it be thumbs up or thumbs down for Simpson?
After the verdicts have been read.
With the verdict only minutes away, the crowd grew silent, serious, and nervous. And then, both disbelief and relief.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
I think it was a good decision because there was evidence that was showing that he didn't do it, and I'm really relieved.
I think what you got here is a justice system basically held hostage based on race, and he can thank Rodney King probably for his verdict.
My verdict before the verdict was that he would walk.
Many people here accepted the verdict of not guilty, but aren't convinced he is innocent of the crime.
As long as it was reasonable doubt, I looked for them and found him not guilty, but my personal opinion, I think he did have something to do with it.
If he was innocent, then I'm really happy that he was set free. If he was guilty, then I'm sad. You've always heard justice is blind, but it makes me think, well, it's not free. What would have happened had he not had the money to pay for the defense team that he had?
After it was over, the final thoughts of one woman turned to Nicole Brown Simpson.
And I hope he's learned a lot about how to treat women and how to be a good husband. And I sincerely hope he puts some real efforts into a conviction that if he didn't do this, we find out who did kill her.
Anita Vanetti, Channel 8 News.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to at this time take this opportunity to publicly thank you for the service that you've given to us. The burdens that we've placed upon you were enormous.
Intense worldwide media attention, an avalanche of testimony and scientific evidence, scenes of mind-numbing violence.
If you look at rate stressors in one's life, I'm sure this is going to climb right to the top.
Dr. Conway McDaniel says some of the Simpson jurors will cope well after 265 days of sequestration. Others will need some counseling. They must reacquaint themselves with their families, jobs, and other responsibilities outside the courtroom.
Some of them could have become somewhat depressed during this time with isolation. I think that, as we said, there could be some bitterness and resentment. There could be difficulty re-engaging with their families, because even the families may be resentful that they weren't around to help out, even though it wasn't their fault. In post-traumatic stress disorder, symptoms often appear later, even though the event at the time you don't notice it.
The world couldn't help but notice the media encampment outside the courthouse. The jurors dismissed during the course of the lengthy trial were the focus of news coverage, and they weren't even the ones to finally decide O.J.'s guilt or innocence. So for those who remained on the panel to the final day in court, the limelight won't fade immediately.
Again, it's going to be the individual juror. Some of them are going to want to decompress by wanting to talk to somebody. Others, I think, really are going to want to be private, and the media can expect very little access to these people, and I hope they can respect that.
Dennis Johnson, Channel 8 News.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
As the verdict was read, making O.J. Simpson a free man, the former football star thanked jurors. The father of victim Ron Goldman seemed in shock. His daughter Kim broke into tears.
This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served.
Later, outside court, Goldman compared his feelings to those he had on the night his son was murdered.
Worst nightmare of my life. This is the second.
Goldman wiped away tears and vowed to seek the changes he believes are needed to make sure what happened in this trial does not happen again. But from Simpson's family, tears of joy. Among them, daughter Arnell, mother Eunice, and oldest son Jason, who sat with his face in his hands.
Me and my family want to thank God, without whom I don't know where we'd be. He's truly
amazing.
Amazing.
Then Jason Simpson read a statement from his father.
I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned.
I knew that my son was innocent, and I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much, and I believed in that. And so therefore, that's why I kept the faith, and I had confidence in his representative.
I think you should always remember, though, you have two families, the Brown family and the Simpson family, and we are two families, and we have two children that we love, and we're going to do what we can, the very best for the children.
He's going to start his life.
Simpson's lead attorney, Johnny Cochran, said the defense team was as ecstatic as the former football star.
This idea of any jury nullification or the idea we didn't have the facts is preposterous. In the opening part of my argument, through a strategy we devised with Lee Bailey, we said that if we could shatter the prosecution's timeline so that O.J. Simpson couldn't have committed this crime, that there would be a reasonable doubt. That's even before we ever got to the socks, the glove, and Furman or anything else.
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Cochran said he never talked to O.J. about a guilty verdict, and he said he would have been remiss not to pursue the race issue.
It was introduced by this witness, Furman. This stuff about playing a race card is preposterous. It would malpractice if a man has racist views in a case and a lawyer doesn't pursue that.
We will never know the loss, really the pain of your loss. We tried as diligently, as hard, as professionally as we could to seek justice in this case. My thanks go to all the law enforcement agencies.
Lead prosecutor Marcia Clark said her sympathy goes out to both the Goldman and Brown families.
No one here has spared any effort. Everyone here has put in 110%, given their all for everyone, for justice, for the families of the victims, in the effort to see that the lives of Ron and Nicole were not thrown away. It was a dignified fight. It showed great courage, great integrity, great moral strength. Thank you.
But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
By the time prosecutors had expressed their sentiments, Simpson had returned home to his Rockingham estate, hugging Al Cowlings, the friend that was with him from the beginning.
It wasn't far into the morning, and already this day felt different. A little nervous, a bit uneasy. Something was coming, something important, and we had to know what it was. Out of DFW Airport, a few people gathered quietly in front of the TV screens. The countdown had begun. Barbara Conrad of Richardson wasn't about to miss it.
I listened to it before I left the house, and then I noticed where the TV was when I got out here, so I could keep in touch on it. Well, I'm probably the only one of the few people that think that he might be innocent.
Can any of us remember a time of such high drama? After all the months of watching and waiting and anticipation, the almost unbelievable eagerness to hear the pronouncement of a few words, simple words, but ones that carry import perhaps unprecedented in the history of American criminal justice. Walk around and you could catch snatches of conversation. What do you think? I don't know. He's going to walk. Guilty for sure. Racist system. No way he can win. Out at the State Fair of Texas, most of them weren't thinking O.J. Too much fun to be had. But even here, some would watch. At the downtown YMCA in Dallas, the exercise and games were put on hold. Time to watch the coverage. In Fort Worth, at Harbor's Galley restaurant, the lunch crowd was less interested in what was in the house salad than in what was in the minds of 12 people, half a continent away. On occasion, perhaps a handful allotted to a lifetime, things happen that transcend the ordinariness of daily life, an event that commands our collective attention. This is such a day. It is a moment caught in time, drawing the eyes and the ears of us all. The time drew down. At the airport, the crowds watching television kept getting bigger. Kevin Godbold and his friend Mike waited with everybody else, tense and anxious. It got very quiet.
No way! No way! There is no justice.
I have two little boys. And it's this proof right here that there's no way.
Wait, what?
Doesn't work.
You unhappy with the verdict?
I'm very unhappy.
I agree with the verdict. I've said it from the beginning, not because of anything that was shown as evidence. So I'm happy with it.
And so finally, it was over. The man at the center of the storm simply left the courthouse and went home. Our system had spoken. He's not guilty. Oddly, during it all, we were apart, but in a way at the end, together. Bill Brown, Channel 8 News.
Law enforcement officers across America cringe at the image of LA police beating Rodney King. Pictures of federal agents making bungled raids on the Branch Davidian compound in Waco and on the Weaver Ranch on Ruby Ridge. Two more blemishes on the face of law enforcement. But perhaps the biggest blow was landed by a police officer himself. Detective Mark Furman, who told jurors in the O.J. trial he had never made a racial remark.
The main police officer involved in this case was in fact a liar.
Dallas defense attorney Martin Lenore says the Simpson jury knows what he has felt for a long time, that police are not all saints.
They can tamper with evidence. They can refuse to record certain types of evidence. There's all kinds of things that a police officer can do that where it may not be actually a lie, they can slant an investigation.
Kimberly White recently served on a jury in Dallas that acquitted a suspect based in part on the police department's handling of the case.
The police system, they are quite unfair, and that, things come out. It's the good old boy system, and it's been there, and it's here, and it's all showing.
Dallas police officials say they are not seeing a trend toward courtroom attacks on police credibility. But they do fear that in the big picture, some will paint them with the Mark Furman brush.
We're not like that, and we're still going to come out, we're still going to answer our calls, and we're still going to do our job, and that involves putting people in jail, and we're going to do it the right way.
Along the boulevard named for one African-American icon, people gathered around their TVs to learn the fate of another. At Graham's Barbershop on Martin Luther King, many, like manager Carl Simon, hoped Simpson would be acquitted.
I'm hoping that he'd be vindicated in it.
It's just no doubt in my mind whether they'd have to come back with a not guilty verdict.
As noontime neared, the Clippers went silent, and even the mailman froze at the door. Few dared predict the juice would go free.
What do you think? Not guilty, guilty?
I think they'll say guilty.
Let's say guilty.
Innocent.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of...
And suddenly, for Simpson, it was over. And on MLK, they say it was justice.
I'm glad he was found not guilty, Maybe the justice system do work after all.
It sends out a message concerning the police department that they do bad things to get what they want, and it's wrong.
And in the beauty shop next door, they were ecstatic.
They need to find the real person that did it, because they planted that and OJ didn't do it. Yeah. So AJ, you go, boy.
Only one of the people we talked to here believes Simpson got off because he had a mostly black jury. The rest, like the business crowd leaving the Green Parrot Jazz Bar, said there was not enough evidence and too much doubt.
It was proven that the evidence was planted, and then go back to the time frame of that. He would have to be Superman. So all along, I always thought it was not guilty.
The curious thing about this case is that it has many African Americans saying that finally the system of justice is working. At the same time, it has many Anglos saying this case is proof that the system has totally broken down. Channel 8's Dave Evans has more on that.
The day began, like all others, at the Fireplug dog grooming shop in North Dallas. Only this time, a TV sat perched atop cages, and everyone had an opinion.
And yeah, I do care what the verdict is, because I think he's guilty.
It was the same at Barnes & Noble.
My gut feeling is he's guilty.
And it was the topic at this manicurist where opinions were mixed.
I really think probably not guilty. I think his rights were violated.
Personally, I think he's guilty, but he's going to walk.
By 11:30, a huge lunchtime crowd packed the Champs restaurant on Beltline. They came because of more than 25 TV screens, all tuned to OJ. And as the noon hour approached, it grew quiet. Waiters stopped. Anxious patrons fidgeted. And then the news came.
Not guilty of the crime of murder. Section 187A.
Other than a handful of people in the bar, this crowd of 400 sat stunned, most of them mumbling, "Unbelievable."
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed.
Brad Plowman and his co-workers from a Dallas radio station all felt Simpson would be found guilty. They say race played a role when it should not have.
I think Johnny Cochran did the job that he set out to do, to make it a racial issue, to kind of defer the facts from what they really were.
I think this is a pretty sad day for the judicial system when it seems that someone can sort of pay their way out of a double murder.
In the afternoon, we went back to that dog grooming business to see what its owner thought now of our judicial system.
Which justice system? There is no justice if he's walking.
This businesswoman is like so many in this part of town. They are angry, disappointed, and can find consolation only in the fact that life for O.J. Simpson will never be the same. Dave Evans, Channel 8 News.
Jurors deliberated fewer than 4 hours.
Every available inch of floor space was taken. Students lined up down the halls, and latecomers had to watch the proceedings through the legs of classmates holding on to the banister. That is how UT Law students prepared for this real-life lesson.
Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of penal code.
The shocked reaction gave way to talk of money.
If you have money and can afford the best attorneys, you're going to win.
I just keep thinking about the Menendez brothers. Innocent verdict, and we see it again here.
Professor Robert Dawson watched the verdict in the faculty lounge.
One of the profs said, well, I guess I'll have to say that this restores my faith in the jury system. Another prof says, well, what this does is to restore my faith in the retainer system.
The fact that he was able to get an acquittal, murders of 2 people, because he had money, because maybe he was a celebrity, because the race card was played, could lower our confidence in the criminal justice system.
I think it was the right verdict, not necessarily because of what I thought he did or did not do, but because I don't believe that the prosecution proved their case.
The fact that they were sloppy in this investigation, because of they needed to be a lot careful, more careful, because this was a celebrity, and also because of the problems they've had in the past. You would think that, their sloppiness really just looks really bad.
Because there are too many lawyers to go into chambers this morning.
Even future lawyers could laugh at the oddities surrounding this trial. During a few minutes at noon, a barrage of messages were sent from a Los Angeles courtroom, and here at least, they lingered. Allenberg, Channel 8 News, Austin.
Students and staff at Madison High School speculated all morning about the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial. In the library, about 20 sophomores and juniors picked by their principal studied and waited for word of the jury's decision.
Sir, this is history being made, and we all are part of history.
Mr. Simpson is again present before.
At noon, all eyes in the library focused on the television as Judge Ito and the jury entered the courtroom for the reading of the verdict on live television. Watch how students react.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
In the past, they really been coming down hard on a lot of brothers, but now the system worked for OJ. Know how that is.
Any feelings for the family, Ron Goldman's family and Nicole Brown's family?
Feel sorry for him, but I think the verdict is right.
If you're really, really innocent, it'll show. And if you're not, it'll show too.
I'm happy. I'm glad that he's innocent.
Administrators read news of the verdict aloud over the public address system at Madison High School. The principal views the entire O.J. Simpson case as a learning experience for students.
This does absolve you from your...
You have to believe in the system if you live in the country. That's the only way you can survive in the system.
Principal Harris believes that is a lesson more of his students and all Americans need to learn. Doug Wilson, Channel 8 News.
Race will be one of the pivotal concern in American society for many, many years to come. Until we're able to grapple with it, it's going to be painful, but it's essential that we look at it honestly.
Reverend Derek Harkins is not surprised by the verdict in the O.J. Simpson murder case. Like many African Americans questioned, like defense attorney Johnny Cochran stated, Reverend Harkins says race matters.
I felt like they didn't follow up their procedures like they should have.
Eddie Ford thinks, like much of the nation, according to recent polls, most African Americans asked thought Simpson was innocent. The whites asked thought he was guilty.
So when you get a Johnny Cochran talking about racism in America,
who then polices the police?
They understand. I'm relieved, but I still understand the system in this country. And while this gentleman was able to compete on some basis with that district attorney's office, most people cannot compete and therefore do not receive that, quote, justice in this country.
The other side of the coin is money. Money to buy the best and brightest legal minds and their investigators. Money was something, at least at the outset of this trial, O.J. Simpson had plenty of.
I can assure you that if O.J. Simpson
had not had the money that O.J. Simpson has, a year ago, O.J. Simpson would have been serving life in prison. He would have already done his first year in prison.
What seemed like limitless finances, a big name, and bigger name attorneys paid off for the man who rushed his way out of the poverty of the projects in San Francisco. But in a case fraught with racial and monetary issues, Reverend Derek Harkins sees the real cost.
I looked at a person who has undergone just an arduous, year plus. I looked at 3 families that have undergone pain and heartache, and my heart goes out to all 3 of those families.
Renee Seiler, Channel 8 News.
Would you please stand and face the jury?
At Billy Miner's, many expected a guilty verdict along with their burgers, but instead were served a surprise.
Not guilty of the crime.
The lunch crowd sat in stunned silence.
I think it's unbelievable that DNA and blood samples can't convict someone. It blows my mind.
At Poly High School, young minds in the media class tracked the case for weeks, getting an education in how the trial was covered. After the trial, the class rendered its verdict on the media's coverage.
I always felt that he was guilty. The evidence just said it looked like he was guilty. But I knew that the jury would say he was not guilty because it was a media trial. And the defendant usually gets off easy on media trials.
I think the broadcast media, in the long term or the long run, if O.J. had been found guilty, it would have been negative because after that, if he had appealed, there's no way you could have found a true jury because of all the coverage.
At TCU, criminal justice students found real-life lessons played outside their classroom.
For a long time, I felt he was guilty, and then I felt he was innocent, and then I decided that we'll really never know. This is the ideal. I think that this case provided the ideal of how the American justice system should work.
Whatever its outcome, the Simpson trial provided lessons on life, death, and the law. Now it's left to students and adults to determine if they like what they learned. John Jones, Channel 8 News, Fort Worth.
I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served.
It was a broken Fred Goldman who spoke to reporters after the verdict.
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second.
In contrast, a jubilant yet subdued Simpson family.
Me and my family want to thank God, without whom I don't know where we'd be. Statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over.
Simpson's mother said it was her religious faith that got her through the ordeal.
I knew that my son was innocent, and I had the support of so many people all over the world. And I know that prayer of the righteous prevaileth much.
I just feel like standing on top of this table and dancing a jig, and I just want to thank you guys.
There's just a lot of mending and healing that needs to take place there.
I think you should always remember, though, you have two families, the Brown family and the Simpson family, and we are two families, and we have two children that we love, and we're going to do what we can, the very best for the children.
We'll never be able to say thank you enough. I will forever be proud of my son.
By the time prosecutors voiced their sentiments, Simpson had returned home to his Rockingham estate in a white van, news helicopters overhead. A scene that looked eerily similar to the one last year when Simpson and his friend Al Callings made television history in a white Ford Bronco on the highways of Los Angeles. Callings was back in the picture today, embracing Simpson when he arrived home. Tonight, instead of suspense, there was celebration as sounds of a party at Simpson's estate echoed through the Brentwood neighborhood.
From DFW Airport
Would you please open the envelope?
to classrooms,
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
from shopping malls
Superior Court of California County
to this restaurant in Fort Worth,
versus Orenthal James Simpson.
and in neighborhood barber shops. All eyes were on the 12 members of the jury and what they would say.
Can any of us remember a time of such high drama? After all the months of watching and waiting and anticipation, the almost unbelievable eagerness to hear the pronouncement of a few words, simple words, but ones that carry import perhaps unprecedented in the history of American criminal justice.
When the words finally came, they triggered an explosion of feelings.
No way!
Gee whiz, Lord. You look pretty happy when the verdict is read. Why? Mainly because of the uproar that could come about in a situation like that. I feel that, you know, with so much corruption going on between the races in the world, that another uproar would cause something to go wrong, I'm sure. And I'm just happy that it's over.
I cannot believe it. America will be the laughingstock of the world. There is no justice. I mean, I can't believe it.
Not guilty of a crime of murder.
Out at the state fair, they got the news.
Not guilty of
And in South Dallas at Graham's Barber Shop.
I praise God. I thank God that, you know, that the jury came to the verdict and it was good on OJ's behalf.
So you're pretty sure you didn't do it?
I'm sure he didn't do it.
Maybe the logic was, well, because of what happened with Rodney King, we can't let that happen again, so we're going to have to find him innocent. And that's a miscarriage.
Not guilty of a crime of murder.
At Dallas's James Madison High, the students put aside the books and got some real-world education.
In the past, they really been coming down hard on a lot of brothers, but now the system worked for OJ, you know how that is.
Any feelings for the family, Ron Goldman's family and Nicole Brown's family?
Feel sorry for him, but I think the verdict is right.
I'm glad it's over with, and if he did it, God will punish him for it in the end.
It has been a long, exhausting 16 months. No matter how they feel about the verdict, everybody seems glad that it's over. Bill Brown, Channel 8 News.
And also
This 27-year-old mother is like most of the 70 residents at the Women's Haven, seeking sanctuary from an abusive husband while trying to gain the strength to forever flee from family violence.
I've been trying to do it for 10 years. So now that I've finally taken the right steps to do that, then I'm more at peace with my life. But yes, it's been a struggle.
So it is with a great deal of personal experience that she watches the verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of a crime of murder.
It comes as a grim surprise to shelter residents and their counselors.
My reaction to the verdict is I'm disappointed that there did not seem to be more consideration on the part of the jury at this time, because there was quite a bit of evidence.
Shocked right now. I'm just shocked.
At women's shelters across North Texas, many have followed this trial with a sort of been there attitude. Now some worry the trial's outcome will be a setback, causing many abused women to give up hope. 30 miles away at the Salesmanship Club Family Center, you could cut the tension with a knife. Therapists here are just as worried.
You know, none of us will ever know for sure what the truth is about this. But this is going to have an impact on our clients, and I think that women are going to be running more scared, and children are going to be in more danger. It just saddens me beyond belief, because there was a hope that people could reasonably look at the evidence and come to a good conclusion.
Despite its outcome, family violence counselors say the early days of the Simpson trial brought much-needed awareness to the help millions of abused women need, and they will push on for progress. Karen Kelly, Channel 8 News.
When you're lying at the beginning, you'll be lying at the end.
The defense found evidence to support its theory of police misconduct in racist former LAPD detective Mark Furman. With Furman, some believe the competence and credibility of all police were put on trial.
Detective Van Adder and Detective Lang never even knew Mark Furman until they met him that night at Bundy.
And yet the allegation by the defense is that they got together that night, meeting for the very first time, and everybody's covering up and conspiring all of a sudden. You realize how many people have to be involved? I mean, it boggles the mind.
Prosecutor Marcia Clark's closing arguments in defense of lead investigators Philip Van Adder and Tom Lang may have been too little, too late. Last week, even before the not guilty verdicts, Lang feared the case had already done irreparable damage to law enforcement morale.
And I hope nothing happens to the extent where homicide investigators hold back or don't do their job because they're afraid of getting slammed like we've been getting slammed in this case for the past year.
In my opinion, if anybody's credibility should be questioned, it should be the credibility of the jury.
Just months short of retirement from 30 years on the Dallas police force, Corporal Jim Nanny says Lang's fears won't bear out in Dallas.
We're all professional police officers. We do what we do because we like what we do. And I feel like that I owe a debt to the people out there that I work for, the citizens of Dallas. And I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to continue to do my job.
But the legacy of Mark Furman won't soon be forgotten, and police officials concede their already hard job has just been made harder.
He's hurt our credibility, but we're going to step right through this as we've stepped through the Rodney King situation in Waco and other situations where people question law enforcement's role.
Heather Ishimaru, Channel 8 News.
In some long-lost movie, somebody says, "I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better." It sure is better in the U.S. criminal justice system. We often hear in America, you get the best justice money can buy. A few examples.
Still, I ask you to forgive me in the name of Jesus for any grief that I have caused you.
Fort Worth millionaire Cullen Davis was accused of wounding his wife Priscilla, killing her daughter, and shooting 2 other people. He paid high-powered Texas lawyer Racehorse Haynes an estimated $2 million to defend him. In 2 trials, Davis was found not guilty. Rich carmaker John DeLorean went on trial for big-time cocaine dealing. After he gave his attorney a $2.5 million ranch, plus almost $1 million in cash, DeLorean was acquitted. And North Texans surely remember Walker Rayleigh, the defrocked preacher charged with trying to kill his wife Peggy. What Rayleigh paid top Dallas attorney Doug Mulder has never come out, but the Methodist Church helped with the tab. Rayleigh went free.
I think people will be missing the point if they judge this case by race. I think this case is about wealth and power.
Former U.S. Attorney Marvin Collins talking about the O.J. Simpson case. Collins has gone up against well-heeled defendants and seen what money in court can do.
I think if you have that kind of money and that kind of power, you have the ability to buy a more expensive brand of justice.
Collins says in 95% of the cases, the system works and the accused does get a fair trial. But he admits money can change everything.
When your pocket is full of money, you can hire that expert on every single issue in the trial, from a glove expert to a DNA expert, and not just any expert, but some of the best experts in the country. And that's what's going to sway jurors.
People without money often end up with a public defender just out of law school, and just as often they end up in prison. The old saying still stands: there are no millionaires on death row. Bill Brown, Channel 8 News.